That's an incredible, incredible beginning. And it really gives us a lot to think about as we continue on this discussion. In the last little while, we have seen an increase in violent hate crimes against Muslims. In 2015, hate crimes in general in Toronto apparently decreased by 8.2%, but hate crimes against Muslims increased. In January of 2017, 6 Muslims were killed in a shooting at a Quebec City mosque. In June of 2021, 5 members of a family out for an after-dinner stroll were run over and murdered by a trucker, leaving a little boy orphaned. Not only are these acts heinous and violent, but they seem to be increasing in brutality. In your opinion, what is the cause of this disturbing trend?
Do you want a one-word answer? 2 words. I'll start.
I have to. You want to go? Go ahead, Nazanin, but I can go too.
Yeah, white supremacy and the way that we're still not extended compassion towards Muslim communities, towards so xenophobia and white supremacy. We have in media, in newspapers, in policies, we give lots of benefits of doubts to people who fit our ideas of white European cisgender straight person, and we still have not learned to extend that compassion, that respect, that integrity towards people of color, especially Muslims, especially visible Muslims, especially visible minorities. Like you can kind of like follow what Memona was talking about, like the darker our skins are, the more targeted we become, the lighter our skins are, the more closer we are to whiteness. Our proximity to that protects us. We don't have that. We still dehumanize Muslims quite a lot, from even the way we talk about refugees, even the way we talk about refugee crisis. It's quite dehumanizing, and it takes the attacker away. Even when we're talking about the Afghan refugees or the Syrian refugees, there's no recognition of the roles that Canada has played and the West has played in creating those crises that has created refugees. So they're going to like happen. So putting people out of context, xenophobia, the white supremacy, I think we need to be dehumanizing another person, but from a counselor point of view, we need to lose touch with the other person's humanity so that we can hurt them. And you have to really lose touch with someone's humanity to be able to run them over or open fire to them. But even acts of war, they're just the same, like people who have bombed in Iran and Iraq and Afghanistan. I think it's just the extension of that in home.
Yeah, before I forget, I'm sorry, let me first thank Memona for reminding me. I keep saying to myself, thank Alison for organizing this. And again, I forgot. You know, I even have a pad here. It says, I can barely remember, right? So I put all the notes, and thank you very much for this wonderful arrangement. And I have to say that I'm learning so much. Now coming back to the question that you had, and thank you, Nazanin. It was very important to mention the existing white supremacy and racism and discrimination. So I take it from there, and I would say that there are domestic and there are international reasons involved in this increase of violence against Muslims. As it relates to domestic, as you know, Muslims are growing numbers in Canada. And I must say that they are also quite successful in their lives in Canada. I can't remember the exact numbers, but I know that there are many Muslims, and the number is higher than actually non-Muslims, who have university degrees. They work hard, whether they are at university level or they have their little family business, and they are working so hard in that little family business, and they buy a little house, you know, they put their kids into universities, and they keep their kids in the house. They don't tell them you're 18, go out and find yourself a job or etc. And then there are other kids in Canada that they are not necessarily enjoying the same privileges that the Muslim kids. They see that they are, you know, it looks to them as if what belonged to them was taken away from them and was given to someone else. Their job was taken away from their parents, from them, was given to Muslim refugees who came here and changed. I have heard it from my colleagues saying that the faces of Canadians are changing. You know, this is such a hard thing for me to digest, to hear from people who have PhD. People having PhD make 2% of the world population, yet this is how their mind is closed. Now, these kids would become targets of international and domestic ultra-nationalist group, those who believe that Caucasian and whites, they have every right to rule over the whole universe, ultra Christian group, you know, all these groups are there, and social media is full of it. You type it, you can feel, oh, they're saying what I'm saying, how I feel. So they are attracted toward it. They don't know anything about Islam. What they see about Islam is not the true Islam. It's not. What they see is usually, if you go to these sites, you see that verses of the Quran is taken out of the context, and it's highlighted with such violence against Jewish people and Christian people. And then they see that how West is concerned. Iran is reaching atomic bomb, you know, embargo is not working, anything is losing, you know, is affecting Iran. We should do something about Iran. We should do something about Syria. So these are kids, you know. For me, I'm a teacher first and then a professor. At certain point, we failed these kids. At certain point, we couldn't reach these children. We couldn't tell them, this is not what you see. Islam is not what you see, that it's presented in the social media. Islam is actually not very different from Judaism or Christianity, because the source is the same, and Islam is so diverse too. Islam is not what you see in Iraq by the ISIS. Islam is not the Taliban. Islam is not, you know, those. That is their understanding of Islam, but it is also my understanding of Islam too, right? So there are so many elements, domestic and international, involved in this. So, and it is our fault. I take full responsibility. It is our fault. We should have tackled the problem when they were younger. We should have provided them with good education. The young man who takes the car or the truck or etc. and goes over a beautiful family, there were so many times in his life that someone should have noticed. Someone should have intervened. So to deal with these problems, we have to take responsibility, every one of us. Muslims, they have to take responsibility to talk, to clear up the problems. And non-Muslims should take responsibility to put some efforts in and try to understand their neighbors. Try to understand, why is it that, they so much dislike Muslims. Sorry, I got very excited here. So leave it to Memona.
No, the personal narratives are good. I definitely appreciate it, Minoo. So your question around, what is causing kind of this disturbing trend, Allison, an increase, and you brought us some stats which are really important to look at. And I think there's, probably three aspects that we want to look at and kind of dissect this on three kind of specific areas. One is laws and policies. The other is Islamophobia as an industry. And then the last one I would talk about is online hate, and I'll just add a few pieces in there. So the first is that we know that the Human Rights Code enables religious freedoms and rights. Nobody argues that, right? But then do we have the proper policies and regulations in place in practice to uphold this? And I think that's the question. So when Nazanin brings up something like, in the immigration document in our handbook, these are the things, and these are the innuendos that underlie that. Who's taking care of that? When you look at, for example, Bill 21, right, in Quebec, which prevents visible Muslims from holding positions in, in government. So if you're wearing a turban, if you're wearing a clerical collar, if you're wearing a cross or a kippah or a hijab, you are going to be undignified against the Universal Code of Freedom of Expression. Right, so these are some things. We know that just over this past summer, we've seen a lot of this in the media. The CRA Review and Analysis Division, the RAD unit, there was a whole research paper that came out on this called Under Layered Suspicion. Where they looked at the audits that took place between 2008 and 2015, and 75% of those organizations whose charitable status was revoked during that period were Muslim charities. And so we need to start questioning these practices. We need to start, looking at, for example, even the scrutiny and the policies, that are taking place through Canada Border Services Agency. Nazanin touched a little bit about this. When we talk about Islamophobia as an industry, I want to really, go into this a little bit. And that is that, while ordinary individuals might be passive receivers in terms of sociocultural messaging and narratives, as Minoo was talking about, knowing your neighbors, not knowing your neighbors, and what's that experience, those narratives. The other part of this is that Islamophobia, research is showing it's quantifiable. There's billions of dollars that are being put into the proliferation of Islamophobia annually. So we know Berkeley University and then the Council on American Islamic Relations in 2016, they put out a report, over $200 million was spent on promoting fear and hatred of Muslims between 2008 and 2013. And what does that mean? So these could be things around, they could trace over 1,000 hate mongering organizations. And so then you look at it, it's actually, there's Abu Bakr Bukhar is his name. He does a good paper around the industry of hate and Islamophobia in the Western public sphere. And he talks about this, and he says that, there's this irrational, incompatible security threat that's created by the West. And then what happens is the knee-jerk reaction to this, then you see, is that legislations and policies and practices that targets this, this hate mongering. And so the industry behind this is actually pushing, and there's more than just, the innocent, joke that Nazanin is talking about, or like the kid on the street. There is an industry behind this. Online hate. If you want to look at statistics in terms of online hate, and Nazanin started us on this, white supremacy. Elizabeth Thompson talks about this in a CBC report. It came out in July 2021. So online activity by right-wing extremist groups, there were 2,467 right-wing extremist accounts found online. They produced 3.2 million pieces of content that then generated 44 million reactions. And then there was also some research done on even the pandemic itself becoming a breeding ground and an environment for radicalization, because you have people that have a lot of time now online spending, at home, at a state of aroused anxiety. And so marginalized communities have become vulnerable to this. We know, I think most people know, even in Canada, the rate of attacks and violence on masjids and community centers, Asian hate, Asian communities experiencing this hate. So online hate is proliferating certain behaviors, right? Jasmine Zain, who researches Islamophobia, she says that, there's this network ecosystem of Islamophobia that's kind of promoting conspiracy theory in Canada. And she does a lot of extensive work on this. And we also know, I'll just leave you with one last statistic, and this was through Statistics Canada. So in 2017, they said that, there was a spike by about 47% of online hate. And then that spiked again by another 7% in 2019. In that same year, police reported hate crime targeting Muslims rose by 9%. So you can kind of bring some of those correlations together. So when we talk about what's causing these increase in trends, I think that there is like systems and structures that we really need to start thinking about. So there's personal Islamophobia, there's, those pieces, but then there's, a wider system that we need to kind of think about as well, in structures.